to, but also know all these cool facts about this faraway land. So it's been really interesting. So Allison, the reason why we wanted to take them to schools is because they're both really, really, really good reporters. Allison is a documentary photographer. She's based here in Washington, D.C., and has been working recently on a project about maternal health around the world. And so she's going to talk to you about some maternal health issues in Nigeria. Ameto is a print journalist from Nigeria who spent the last year at Harvard as a Nieman Fellow, and also as our Persephone Miel Fellow from 2012 to 2013. That's where we fund a non-American journalist to do a reporting project. And so I think that's all I have for now. I should turn it over to you guys, and then they're going to both explain their projects, and we're going to talk a little bit, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So here we go.
Well, hello everybody. It's so good to be here. I promise you I won't talk for too much because I hope your questions and the conversations we have after shapes our interaction. The project we're going to look at was actually part of the last project the Pulitzer Center funded with Internews, and it focuses on U.S. soft power in northern Nigeria. And it's a great thing that in the past couple of years there's been a lot of conversation about foreign aid in the developing world, the face of it, and how important, or not so important it is, how it should be delivered or how it should not be delivered. And my story basically looked at how it's being received in the northern part of Nigeria, how it's being shaped, and also moving forward, looking at the peculiarities, that impact it in terms of the persistent anti-American sentiments that remain in northern Nigeria. I should add that Nigeria is, while we are divided on many lines, political, tribal, we're also divided on religious lines. Nigeria is, the northern part of Nigeria is predominantly Muslim, and the southern part is predominantly Christian. And in the past couple of years, the United States, through its main vehicle of delivering soft power, has pursued projects that target mostly the northern part of Nigeria. And why the discourse from their side has been, we want to focus on our resources on the part of the country which is doing very badly. We know in the past couple of years there has been a lot of issues that have, more or less shown that there persists a lot of anti-American sentiments, which has evolved into, anti-democratic sentiments, anti-Christian sentiments. So I should just talk about this. About a decade ago, and I just want to highlight this because I think it's particularly important against the context or within the context of current realities in Nigeria with Boko Haram and violence that has been happening in the past couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of years. Over a decade ago, about a decade ago, polio has been a major issue, of course, in that part of the world. And there are three major countries where polio has not been disrupted: Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And a little over a decade ago, a couple of countries came together, France, the UK, and the US, among others, to form this anti-polio campaign, campaign to help deal with polio in Nigeria. However, as the campaign progressed, in the northern part of Nigeria, there was this, I call it a rumor because interacting with people, I know it's not true, but it was, they say all things is about perception. A lot of people believe this is true. The fact that many Islamic clerics preached to their followers that the whole anti-polio campaign was an American anti-Islamic plot to keep the people infertile, to sterilize the people. And this spread like wildfire. So many people rejected, the polio vaccines, and up to today we still have a problem with that. And while some people would insist that it's just about it's just about the anti-Western sentiment. The fact is, when you dig deeper, you find it's way more complex than that. It brings into perspective or into context things like Nigeria's political situation and Nigeria's socio-economic situation, and also the issues of weak governance and among others. So first, I think we should just look at some expressions of U.S. soft power in Nigeria. So I talked about that 5 years ago, the U.S. decided to pursue this project, but a little over 5 years ago. It's a 5-year project between 2008, starting in 2008, to focus most of their funds in northern Nigeria. And they focused on issues that have to do with water, sanitation, education, and good governance. And so one of the things the USAID does is that it provides toilets. It provides toilets in schools. And the idea is part of the whole push, one of the Millennium Development Goals, to help reduce open defecation. And so they provide these toilets in schools in northern Nigeria. This picture was taken in the largest city in northern Nigeria called Kano. And the picture you see by the right is usually the way it's branded. It's branded, constructed, and co-founded by USAID. And just underneath it, it says "From the American People." But in light of the present realities, with people being attacked, with Boko Haram, attacking schools and everything, they thought to minimize, the feelings of, to minimize the risks to states or to schools that have gotten support from USAID, and they changed that. They changed the policy, and they stopped branding it with USAID, and it's just branded by the local partners who help them deploy it. I said they support the provision of access to clean drinking water. And so in this picture, we're in this village where, apart from providing the water pumps, they go ahead to also train people in how to maintain the water pump and the water pumps. Because a lot of times they break down. As we know, providing boreholes isn't necessarily a sustainable way to provide clean drinking water. A lot of them break down within 6 months of being taken place. So they decided to also bring in this program where women are trained in how to maintain the boreholes, and that's what this is doing. This is in 2012, in January 2012, about 12 people were killed at this site. 8 of them were women who were, this is actually a primary health center. 8 of them were women who were about to go out. They just came in to get supplies. They were going out to administer polio vaccines. They were shot down by men on rickshaws and motorbikes, screaming, "God is great" in Arabic. Later on, Boko Haram will claim responsibility for this attack. Because follows the whole narrative of polio as Islamic American plot to sterilize people. And after they were killed, of course, the health center was shut down. Kids playing goats, going in and out of the facility. And as in the past 5 years, as peace in the northern part of Nigeria has disrupted and security has become a major issue, security has increased. You see this all over the place. This road actually leads to Maiduguri, which is the hotspot for Boko Haram. And they actually call it Hanya Iraq, which is Hausa for the road that leads to Iraq. Sort of referencing the fact that there's a lot of instability in Iraq, and this is a dangerous road you shouldn't travel on. Let's say we travel the space of 3 kilometers, that's a short distance, but we have to go through about 4 or 5 armed men checking to see if we had explosives and things like that. I included this because I visited several schools where USAID's project were targeting young girls. I don't think it will be news to know that while access to clean drinking water is a major issue in this part of the country, women are the most impacted because women are responsible for getting water for household, they trek miles, to get clean drinking water, enough for everybody. 2 years in the house. And so a lot of girls do not go to schools. And while illiteracy is very high in the northern part of Nigeria, it's of course higher among the female population. So the USAID created this program, of course in partnership with local groups, to provide boreholes in certain schools on the condition that they increase enrollment for girls. So the idea was the young girls come to schools with their buckets and their kegs, and they attend classes, and at the end of the day, they are then allowed to use the facilities to fetch water. So it sort of encouraged people to send their daughters to school. So these are some of the tools donated to people. This school is, I found this a little funny and maybe a little ridiculous too. They have this timetable for the girls to have access to clean drinking water to drink, and really they actually line up as if it's an assembly, and the teacher sort of, well, actually this was the principal of the school, gives them water, and all the rubber bowls were actually labeled Project of USAID. One of the schools, and all the schools I went to, surprisingly, when we checked the records, there were way more girls enrolled than the boys. So it's amazing how just this basic project could create such an impact. This is another project called it's a project that focuses on maternal health. So in this particular locality, the nurses were having a problem. Women were running away from the hospitals. As a matter of fact, when they go out for outreaches to try to get pregnant women to come to the hospitals to get checkups, they will run away because their husbands did not want them to have any access to Western medicine. So the USAID created this project where they deliver high impact strategies at low cost. So first and foremost, they partnered with traditional birth assistants, which were the means, which was the popular way the women gave birth. These women, of course, do not have any training. So, like this woman, her name is Mama Mubarak. Her day job is basically selling firewood. But they partnered with women like this in the community, and they trained them, how to take care of women, how to see signs that she may be in trouble in terms of her pregnancy, and then also give them basic drugs like chlorhexidine and misoprostol. Chlorhexidine. Okay, the statistic is that about 25% of kids who die within the first couple of weeks of birth die because their umbilical cords get infected. And a simple, very low-cost solution like chlorhexidine could be used, but could be used, and it could solve that problem. But the federal government does not provide this. The state government does not provide this. So the USAID provided this project where the drugs were delivered to the people in partnership, so to say, with the state government, where it was really being funded by USAID. So I went along with some of the nurses, going around talking to women, trying to get them to come to the hospital. So what ties all these projects together? Because it's just a 5-year program. But what the USAID does that is sort of applaudable is the fact that they help the communities create a kind of sustainable program to help keep these programs going. They help create local communities driven by locals. So, for example, men, women are brought together and they contribute to fund the projects. Like, for example, this project, the men contribute, the women contribute, and they are able to buy those drugs, which actually helps reduce postnatal. And then the water project, after the first donations, they are supposed to contribute as well to provide tools to keep them going and to keep those water pumps going. But then what you find is that it also creates this situation where it removes the cloak of responsibility from the state government, because these are the things they should be doing, but then the people are being forced to support themselves. And it was clear, there was a lot of fear expressed that, oh, once the Americans go, this is over. I think I'll need to stop here. I know you have a lot of questions, and I hope that shapes our discussion. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm There we go. Hi, so I'm Allison. I'm really glad that Ameto went first because she gave you guys great context. And I was in Nigeria for 6 weeks last fall with a writer named Dubious Results. You know, when we parachute into a place like that and just have a little bit of time on the ground, it's very hard to understand or to know the context that you're talking about. And so it's great to, you know, we always like to work with people like Ameto and smart people on the ground who know what they're doing. So, so it's great to go after them. So what I looked at there was the issue of abortion. We looked at this because it's a huge issue there for a lot of reasons. It's sort of a perfect storm of factors that make it a really terrible thing. So Nigeria happens to be the world's second most religious country. This is defined as people who identify with a religion. It's, as Ameto said, it's about 50% Muslim, 50% Christian. Neither of those religions are very friendly to contraception or to abortion. So what that means is you have an atmosphere that is very against those things and creates laws that are very much against those things. In Nigeria, abortion is illegal except for to save the life of the mother. Contraception is very hard to find. The government's in has a big program now where they're really trying to get it out there, trying to put it into clinics. It should be free, and they declare that it is free, but in practice, it's very hard to find it. And the statistic that you'll see in this video that I'm about to show you is that only about 11% of women are actually using contraception. In a country, you know, you've got this country where you've got a lot of people coming in, starting to come in from the countryside into the big cities. So you've got Lagos, of what is it, 12 million people
Yes.
in Lagos? One city, 12 million people crowded into this place. As people come in from the surrounding countryside, their ideas and norms are starting to change about sexuality, and they're becoming more sexually active. The age of marriage is steadily kind of rising in these places. And this is why you're getting these things happening. So what happens is abortion becomes something that is not talked about. Contraception is not talked about. There's a lot of misconceptions, and everything goes underground, making it far more dangerous. In the U.S., the rates, we'll just talk about some numbers here. Per 100,000 abortions in the United States, you have less than one person dying, so 0.6. In sub-Saharan Africa, which includes a lot of countries where abortion is illegal, that number is 460. So you can see sort of the difference between places where it's legal and not legal, safe and unsafe. So I think what will explain this to you a little bit better is if we just watch a little video that I made that I did that was in Global News last week.
Grab the lights.
Ìgbà tí mo wà ní 20 years ni mo rí ọkùnrin. Ìgbà tí mo bẹ̀rẹ̀ mi tí mo déètì tí mo ṣe. Mo ń gbé pẹ̀lú mọ́mì. Mi ò lọ sí school rárá. Mo ń kọ́ iṣẹ́. Mo máa ń ṣe sweet àti bá ṣe ṣètì tó máa ń fa bá àwọn máa rò máa lọ sí iṣẹ́.
Ibi àdúgbò tá a wà yẹn, àdúgbò tá a wà, ìlú Èkó tá a wà, ó jẹ́ pé ìlú kan tó jẹ́ pé iṣẹ́ wọn kò tọ́ ọmọ. Gbàtọ́ wá ní bí ọ̀dọ́ tó ní pé mo á pè wọ́n pé ẹ ti di obìnrin, orin kankan bá sọ̀rọ̀ tí kò fẹ́ tẹ̀ yín ní ìwé ní kí wọ́n fọwọ́ torí èyí ní àmọ́ kẹ sọ pé wá rí mi.
Ó ní pé àwọn àgbàlagbà náà ló máa ń sọ pé òye ìgbà sílẹ̀ mi gan wá láìkẹ́ mo nífẹ̀ẹ́ torí èmi mo ti gbà fún mi.
Wọ́n nítorí àwọn tó ìjọ jẹ́ pé àjùjọ bí wọn gbogbo wọn ti lọ bímọ tán fún àwọn ọmọ ìlú. Àwọn tó ń bá lò ń ìjọ lọ sí ìlú ṣiṣẹ́ ọmọ gidi wọn ọ̀ ìdí ìlú gbọ̀ngàn ni wọ́n ìdí ìlú.
Mi ò lò nǹkan kan wọ́n ní pé tó ń bá lò ó lè ba inú jẹ́ àbí kó búlọ́ọ̀kì kó má lọ́mọ bí.
Nigeria has a low contraceptive rate. Oh, there are many theories. Many people associate contraception with sterility. So that's number one. The culture is that you can't talk to your parents about it. Your friends are equally ignorant. Some people believe that if you use family planning, when you are reincarnated in the next world or whatever, you will be sterile.
Ẹ̀gbọ́n ọkọ mi obìnrin nígbà tó fẹ́ ṣẹ́yún tó lọ ṣẹ́yún òun ló kú nítorí ẹ̀ ìdí rèé tèmi náà fi sọ fáwọn ọmọ mi pé ẹnìkan nínú wọn lè gbọ́dọ̀ rí kó ṣẹ́yún. Màá bínú sí o, màá bínú sí lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀, inú mi ò dẹ̀ lè dùn, inú mi ò lè dùn, kò dẹ̀ lè tọ́nú mi.
Mo lọ sí ìlú ló fi wọ́ọ̀ṣì nínú mi. Wá ní pé kí n sùn ó kò ń pé kí n ní ìsàlẹ̀ wá ní pé ìṣàgbà tó wá ṣe tán ni mo wá lo abẹ́rẹ́ wá ní pé kí n lọ sí ilé. Èmi náà ni mo sùn tí mo bá lọ ṣe ohun fún ẹnìkan owó ìmá máa tọ́jú sílẹ̀.
Today is a special day, not only for our brothers, but also for
Ọkùnrin lè wà ló máa tọ̀ èèyàn sí ibi tí wọn lè tọ̀ èèyàn ló máa tọ̀ èèyàn. Torí ẹ̀ ni mo fi wá ní pé màá stọ́pù ẹ̀mí tí wọ́n bá lè wá níṣẹ́ tó máa ráyè ọ̀dọ̀. Èmi ni mo fi kọ́ gbọ́n. Ó ní pé tí nǹkan àkọ́kọ́ bá sùn, wá fi yẹn fi kọ́ gbọ́n. Ó lè jẹ́ pé iṣẹ́ mi ló tún máa jẹ́ kí n dèrò ńlá kí n ṣáà mo fẹ́ di èèyàn ńlá lọ́jọ́ ọ̀la.
Okay, so video. Here's some photos to show you. So that kind of put it into context maybe just a little bit. People don't talk about these things, not even with their moms. People don't talk about people. Not even with their own families sometimes. And you can imagine how that causes problems, right? If you can't even tell your own mom, then that's going to be a huge issue. I wanted to show you some pictures that will also fill out the context just a little bit, and give you a little bit of understanding about why a woman might get to the point where she makes this decision. So this woman here on the left, her name is Adeogun. She's 24 years old, and she lives in a part of Lagos that's not uncommon. This is because Lagos is on the ocean. and land is very scarce, a lot of people live in areas that involve water. So this happens to be a marshy area close to the shore, and it's been sort of taken over by people who have built their homes on stilts. So the entire village basically is on these rickety sort of wooden walkways and stuff. Gideon grew up in this area and had a home similar to the ones that behind her. And a couple days before I met her, her next door neighbor was cooking a pot of beans and fell asleep and burned down his house and hers. And I believe he died in the process, but she was newly homeless and was sleeping right there on that piece of cardboard at night in a very dangerous situation. A few weeks before that, her longtime partner had been put in jail, I'm not sure for what, and she was 6 months pregnant. She is taking care of her young nephew, and she's freaked out. She's barely making enough. She's not making any money. She has no job. Her boyfriend was the one with the job, and he's in jail. So she's trying to decide between having the baby and having an abortion. And she doesn't want the abortion, but she can imagine how she's going to raise this child. So this is a story that unfortunately is not uncommon in Nigeria and especially Lagos, and it put it into context for me, the decision that some women forced to make. This is another sort of heart-wrenching story, and we're doing a big video on this through NPR. It should be out in the next 2 weeks on the website. This is a 16-year-old girl who has asked us not to name her, so we are not naming her. Her best friend, who is also 16, last year was raped in this hotel room where she is right now by a stranger, someone she had just met online, and became pregnant and went behind the back of her family, behind the back of his friend, and got an abortion from a woman in the neighborhood. We're not even sure what that procedure was like. We definitely know the woman who did it was certainly not qualified or trained in the procedure, and she developed an infection and died about a month after the procedure. The sad part of this story is that our friend here said, look, you can tell my story, you can't say my name, but don't tell my mother because she doesn't know, and neither does my friend's mother. Nobody knows how she died. They think she died of some kind of ailment. So that broke my heart because it made me realize, like, if you can't even tell your mom anything, this is the heart of the issue. So I wanted to also tell the story by showing you how a woman might go about getting an abortion in Lagos. And one way is to go to a traditional healer, also called an herbalist. These folks, have remedies for just about every ailment you can imagine. And they've been around for many generations. This is sort of like the standard health care from back when. This woman makes a mixture out of a certain set of plants and materials, grinds them together, and she says, she'll give you a bottle of this liquid, and she says, take a little cup of it in the morning, a little cup in the evening for 3 days, and then come to me all red in the belly like she's doing for this woman, and the abortion will happen. This is probably the nicest facility we saw in Lagos. This is an actual doctor who, we saw his diploma. He's actually graduated from medical school. Hard to know if he's actually been trained in abortion procedures. But not. But he actually had, sterilizer. He had all the right equipment. He did a lot of other things in that clinic. He also did abortion. He asked that we not, reveal his identity also. This kind of abortion is out of reach for almost everybody in Lagos. 70% of Nigerians live on less than $2 a day, and this doctor charges over $100 for an abortion. So you can imagine only the folks at the top of the chain are going to do like this, and you have a better chance of having a safe procedure. This is a little out of order, but this is these are the two different plants that our herbalist who we saw a second ago that she mixes together to make that concoction that we need. This is another kind of herbalist, another kind of traditional medicine person. He's a third generation herbalist. And kind of on a little larger scale than our woman who is actually practicing out of their home. These folks actually have a little kind of storefront area on the main drag of their neighborhood, and using a 55-gallon drum to mix different things. And while we were there, we actually were chatting with him and his mother, and a woman walked up and bought a bottle of something, and we said, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's what we sell for abortion." Don't know what's in it, but women seem to trust this family, and it's been going for 3 generations, so do it. This is a really important change that's happening right now in the world, really, but especially we saw this a lot in Nigeria. This is the drug called misoprostol that Ameto was talking about, can help stop the postpartum hemorrhage, right? You take 2 pills, and that has saved the lives of many women. So a lot of health organizations are really trying to get this drug out there to save lives of women in the birth process. One thing the drug can also be used for is abortion. And it's used a little bit differently. Instead of taking 2 pills, you still take 2, but you take them for 6 days. So you take your 2, the next day you take another 2 for 6 days, and that actually causes the abortion to happen. A very controlled drug. It's something that should only and is only legally allowed to be gotten by prescription, but in reality, you can buy it on pretty much every street corner in Lagos without a prescription, and it's about $7 for the 12 pills. So it's becoming increasingly more popular, as you can imagine. This is another man who also sells drugs. He called himself a pharmacist, but in reality he's had no pharmaceutical training at all, and as many people who sell drugs in these little informal shops, often there's plenty of them. He tells me he gets 3 to 5 women a week coming to him asking for abortion. He has a slightly different drug protocol, but he'll, and it all happens sort of in the day, he tells me, but he gives them a specific combination of drugs, has them go into this back room until everything starts working, and this is how it happens. It's all this is another way that you can buy the drugs you need for this procedure. This is the neighborhood, as you can see, right on the railroad tracks. And right behind me there is a brothel. It's pretty popular in this neighborhood. In the daytime, these 2 guys over there on the right by the light, they carry around these huge laundry baskets that you can see there, sort of doubled over with basically CVS pharmacy, like everything from, condoms to razor blades to whatever you can imagine. And they walk around selling these things. At night, they set up in front of the brothels, and we asked this man, "Oh, do you have anything for abortion?" And he pulled out like 3 different options. So pretty handy. So this, I put a few things in here just to sort of give you an idea of what neighborhoods we're talking about. This is the Badia neighborhood in Lagos, and sort of on the main market street. And again, some of the women that live along the tracks. This is a woman, one of the nurses in one of the clinics. And again, just sort of a general view of one of the neighborhoods. To show how informal things are, you can sort of see in the front there on the right all kinds of bottles, with sort of regular beverages, and then off to the left you've got these random water bottles full of things, and that's how a lot of traditional medicine is sold in that kind of setup. And from what I'm told, the medicines change during the day and then during the night. So at nighttime you're going to find things like what we saw being sold versus things you can find. So I threw a few images here at the end that just sort of illustrate how big religion is in Nigeria, because religion really has so much to do with why these laws are still in place. This is an evangelical church called the Redeemed Church, and once a month they do this big gathering. It's in this gigantic facility right outside of the city, and they gather a lot of people. This is the choir, and you can see the facility holds 1 million people. So there are 1 million plastic chairs lined up in this thing. It goes on for football fields and so the back and big monitors, you know, progressively stacked back there in the back to so this is we went back and visited some of the folks at the Catholic, the health office of the Catholic Church in Lagos. And, you know, we started talking about abortion, and it pulls out the canon law of the Catholic Church and opens to it and shows me where this book says that if you have an abortion or you provide an abortion, how you would instantly be excommunicated. And we're back at the Redeemed Church. This woman is praying over this beautiful outfit. This was also interesting. This was an overnight vigil that the Catholic Church organized to pray for the souls of aborted babies. It was called Vigil and Reformation for the Lives of the Unborn, or something like that. And it went from like 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. with people praying this sort of modified prayer and for the souls of babies who were so. You know, something that the church is actively present on. This is a rosary that you can buy at this vigil, and kind of hard to see the beads instead of regular rosary beads. They're little clear plastic beads, and inside each bead is a little plastic bead. And that's just another shot from that vigil. I think that's it for the photos. That's a lot to take in. But does anybody have any questions?
So actually, we'll bring up both of these guys and take questions. I think we have a mic runner, but you guys will look on the list here and questions that you have for either journalist. Come and find.
Thanks. I guess I have a question for both of you. Sorry. Allison, the picture that you showed of the doctor, he was obviously obscured. You didn't show his face. But at the same time, it seems like people know where to find him. So obviously he's findable. I'm wondering, is there a concern that some kind of authorities will show up? Or is it more, as Ameto pointed out, that the one clinic that had been shut up, that is more of the potential risk in giving in providing abortions?
Yeah. So the great thing is that there really isn't, there's really no fear of the law. I mean, I remember we asked this question a lot, like, has anyone been arrested for this? And from what we can tell, people are not being prosecuted, right? So doctors really are not being prosecuted for this thing. It's kind of an open secret, right? So everybody kind of knows it's happening, but no one's talking about it. And so, you get these, what would happen is if he got outed, it would just be one of those things that would just be a total disgrace, and people would feel that they couldn't go to him anymore because everybody knows now, But if you don't talk about it, it's sort of the secret, and it's okay. One of the words that kept coming up as we were talking to people about this issue is hypocrisy. How people will say, no, this is what I believe, and we heard this over and over. Like, women will go to church and say, this is what I believe, and then the next day they'll take their daughter into an abortion. So this appearance versus reality, and it's a total dichotomy. And I actually like to hear what you say.
It seems all true.
Can you guys hold the mics up really?
Okay. So everybody knows in your neighborhood. Everybody knows where to go to get an abortion, so to say. And the authorities know as well, just as long as we do not advertise it. And the fact is that a lot of the abortion clinics, or more like, because it's often a one-man show, the abortion places, so to say, they are more afraid of backlash from the church or the mosque than they are from the authorities.
All right, I have a question that maybe combines both of your projects. I had a question about that drug that you mentioned, the one that can stop postpartum hemorrhaging, but it can also be used maybe to help start an abortion. And I was wondering if foreign aid providing that drug is hesitant to provide it because of that factor, because so many foreign aid groups are pro-life, are sort of Christian, and are hesitant to even provide contraceptives. So I was wondering how that sort of gets in the way of providing for Nigeria's needs.
It's a great question. Yeah, this is something we talked a lot about there, and so there's a great group called Marie Stopes, and they're very active in this topic, and they're active there, and their sort of policy, as many of the NGOs are there, is like, you know, they really like want to support safe abortion, but they honor the law of the civil land they work in every country where they work. Misoprostol is a tricky thing because it is saving so many lives, but it's kind of a new. This is all very new with this particular drug, and so they're fighting two things actually with misoprostol right now. They're fighting counterfeit drugs with this one. So they've been really focused on that idea. Like, okay, so they started this new like scratch thing that's sort of like a lottery ticket scratcher, where you can like scratch off the little silver stuff, and then you call in a number and say, okay, here's this number of my particular drug. Is this a legitimate number? And they say yes. So that they've been focused on that, and now this whole thing is sort of like taking them off hard, I think. And it's dangerous because, you know, if you've got that much misoprostol out there, it's very easy to overdose, right? So I don't think, from what I've seen, they're just sort of like, oh, okay, great, now we just take this on. But it feels like a really new issue, and I think that particular group is fighting it, trying to fight it with information, you know, because you don't get any, there's no like, you know, insert when you buy the drug that tells you how to take it, you know, it's off-label. So they're out there really just trying to educate people about what not to do wrong about it at this point, and I don't know how they're going to tackle it.
So, yeah, that's a very good question. While I was researching the story, and I told you about this thing, this program being funded by USAID called Tissue, and they're really behind. It has never been done before. They're really behind the use of misoprostol, and particularly in the northern part of Nigeria, where access to drugs is even way more limited. This is really a new thing, and it's being pushed into the market seriously. As a matter of fact, the Bauchi state governor, which is one of two states where the USAID is pushing this program, is already working with some Asian companies to bring a factory to the northern part of Nigeria that will start producing this drug. And I realized just late in my research that this drug could be used for abortion. And I kept asking the question, particularly in a region where on one hand, accountability is close to zero. On the second hand, there's very little sex education, and contraception is frowned upon. There's an increase of teenage pregnancy, and then there's a high rate of rape and girls getting pregnant from rape. And now you are making this drug available with no clear gatekeepers. We already know the implications. And while sadly I moved, unfortunately I moved to the US during that research, but I kept in touch with a lot of people, and I kept asking them, how are you going to deal with this? Because you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that there are implications for this. And a lot of them kept shying away from it. We hope people will be responsible, which is a little bit idiotic. You know, you have no clear measures to deal with this. People are going to start accessing it and, of course, abusing it. So really, there's no clear plan to deal with it, and they are pushing it massively into the system. So it'd be great to go back and know how that comes.
Okay, great.
I have a question on polio, and the rise of polio in Nigeria as well as Afghanistan and Pakistan is incredibly worrying. Did you get a sense up north how the local media is covering it, and if they're helping or hurting? And also, did you see any possible solutions to get around the rumor campaign that's spreading around polio?
So a lot is being done on both sides being the Western side and the Nigerian, government. The fact is this: there's this reality in that part of the world. It's almost like the way a child covers his eyes and hopes nobody can see. And basically, that's what's happening. It's like I actually confronted the just recent past U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, saying part of the major issue is the anti-Western sentiment in this part of the country. What are you doing directly, to deal with it and to get people to start? And his response was, everybody's reasonable, and we know that everybody will turn around and be reasonable, to use the drug, which it's a very diplomatic response, I know. But and you then ask the government side, and they say things like, yes, we know it's a problem, and we're going to crush all those who are, who are a barrier to polio. But then they do not show you a clear strategy in tackling it. The fact is, religion is a very sensitive issue. A lot of times we shy away from saying categorically, this is a problem with the Muslim, the Islamic clerics who are preaching this wrong thing. In terms of the media being a part of the solution, yes, they are being deployed, and the truth is that they are the only source of attack to deal with the problem right now, in terms of campaigns being run saying, the drugs are safe. But what shocked me during the research of this is often it is pegged to be illiteracy, and it's pegged to be, because these individuals are uneducated, that's why they believe that the polio vaccination would make them better. But I talked to very educated people who, some of them I couldn't mention their names because they were currently, some of them are actually working for USAID, some of them are actually working for Western entities, and they are saying, I've never given my kid polio vaccination. Why are the West so interested? They must have we shouldn't trust everything the Westerners tell us. So it's the fact that while Boko Haram may be an extreme expression of that, it exists and it is a barrier. Solutions will come very slow.
Sorry, my phone on. There you go. Thanks. This was really, really interesting, both of your presentations. I work for an organization that works in U.S. foreign policy and sexual and reproductive health and rights, so both of your presentations really spoke to what we're working on. And I was just wondering about civil society in terms of, how strong are organizations that are like women's rights organizations that maybe are starting to speak out, trying to get reform of laws, or is this still such a stigmatized subject that women's groups are kind of keeping silent?
Are you speaking specifically about abortion?
Yeah.
As we said earlier, Nigeria is divided into Christian and Muslim. And while there's a lot of tension between both religions and one of the few things both sides agree upon is the issues around contraception. No sex until you get married. No to abortion. But the problem with both sides is that they are not pushing alternatives. And in reality, we know young people are having sex. People have been getting raped and getting pregnant, and they want to get rid of their kids and get rid of the pregnancy. And the fact is, while a lot of female groups may be pro-abortion or pro-abortion, they never come out publicly to say so because they are scared of the fact that even the government has never really come out to, let's talk about it. Should we be pro or should we be anti? Just a blanketed statement that abortion is illegal. So in terms of civil society and non-governmental agencies addressing it, none of them can come out and say we are pro-abortion. Let's discuss it. It's often couched in women's rights and better health care. I don't think, based on the realities on ground right now, that will change anything soon. but I believe that pushing for better health care would help provide an avenue for women to be able to address it.
I mean, I don't obviously I have some kind of context that Ameto does, but I did find it interesting. Back years ago, and I don't remember what year, but I want to say like 15 years ago, there was a movement put together by several prominent doctors called the Campaign to End Unwanted Pregnancy, and it was a pro-choice movement. And they were very vocal and they were very public, and they tried to get out there and just mobilize people around this issue, and it never took off. People would not get it. And the movement officially sort of petered out after time. And what this group is, finding out is that the best way to wage this war is underground. And so what you'll find, and like this is sort of a secret, is that you'll find very skilled doctors will provide abortions sometimes in public hospitals for free to people that know about them, completely under the radar, like under the radar of the hospital administrators often, and just schedule themselves in between procedures and just do these because it's the safest abortion you can get. But they're risking their jobs. They're risking their lives. And that's the way that I'm seeing that. For my brief time.
This is a question for Ameto. In your experience in the field, does soft power work?
Soft power work would be for whom?
For the United States.
So, soft power being the ability of the nation or cluster to get the other to sort of pursue their own agenda. Because basically soft power is all about agenda setting.
Can you speak up a little?
Okay, sorry. I said soft power being the ability of one nation or one cluster to persuade the other, not intimidate to pursue his or her own leanings or particular agenda. Because soft power really is about agenda setting. Seriously. And why? Yes, it brings about short-term solutions for the people in terms of getting people to be more friendly to the US or get people to love the US more or their ideology. Not really, because more and more people are beginning to find out that yes, 1 million kids for HIV, free kids for HIV testing is a great thing. It doesn't create jobs, and that's why the statistics, the Pew Research statistics, is increasingly showing that people are actually saying we would prefer for Nigeria to have relations with China than the US. Yeah, we know the US is great, maybe they are better in terms of human rights indices and so on, but the Chinese come here, they get into manufacturing, they help provide infrastructure, they are providing jobs. While the Americans, they speak very nicely and the rhetoric is great, but what they do is basically they give us fish and not fish. So increasingly people are getting more smart and they realize, hey, we want to move forward. And the thing about this is that countries like Iran and China are finding this as a nice entry point to say, we told you, we have to all stick together and make ourselves better. The US will never help us. And then the US also sort of supports their rhetoric by being, somebody described it this way, by the US sometimes is to Nigeria, to many countries in Africa, like the man who says, I don't love my wife, I don't love that person to have. Because as China increasingly shows more interest in countries like Nigeria, suddenly the US is turning around and they're changing their music. They recently created this group called the Binational Commission. Suddenly they're talking about things like, oh, how can we help to you guys to improve your electricity sector, stuff like that. Right? This was never there because of course the Chinese narrative and the Iranian narrative in Nigeria, for example, is, oh, we told you it's because we're doing things for you guys now, that's why we are. So it's a real thing.
Yes, a couple more questions.
This is a speculative.
Actually, we can't
We
hear
can't,
you
we
back
can't
here.
hear that microphone.
Yeah.
This is a speculative question. So you may not. In this country, before abortion became legal, we had a variety of underground abortion groups. In Chicago, where I live, the group is known as German. It was run by feminists. They were not doctors. They were trained in abortion by doctors. And they performed abortions pretty much very cheaply. My roommate was in Germany. I don't pay one abortion in my bathroom. All I know is I would come home from class and find the door locked and barricaded, and I would put on something like this in the night. She wouldn't go into bed. Why happened to women in Nigeria organized an equivalent like that? Who doctors don't have to worry about using a doctor?
That's a great question. Based on what you have described, this movement was one that was driven by ideology. These women believe we are women, this issue is being controlled by men, the laws are being controlled by men, we should take a stand and also provide support for women, right? Is that being, am I categorizing that properly?
Yeah.
So, but in Nigeria, it will surprise you that most of the opposition to abortion is not actually from the men, it's more from the women. And apart from it being a religious thing, I know Allison beautifully highlights the religious dynamic to religious opposition to this. It's also a cultural thing. The fact that our culture does not support abortion and women will stand against it, which is a lot of times very hypocritical because all you have to do is scratch beneath something like this. The fact that all these women, all these mothers have had abortions themselves. So perhaps if the women had a clear ideology in terms of women's rights, they could create.
What you're describing in Nigeria is exactly what we have. Okay? First of all, there was no distinction between men and women in opposition to abortion, number one. Number two, there was simultaneously going on a movement and an underground. The movement talked, the underground acted. They were not the same people. They could not afford to be the same people. Okay? When you say scratch bone disturbance and a woman is having an abortion, yes, that's exactly what we had. But what developed was a group of women, and it was women, trained by doctors who were willing to do the deed quietly, underground, cheaply.
So let me add, you rightfully stated at the beginning that this should be a speculative violence. The fact is this, and this is one major issue that is reflected in every other issue in Nigeria, is the fact that we do not talk about the issue. It's a society that where everything is shrouded in secrecy. Something bad happens, so just don't talk about it, just keep it on that. It's reflected not just in our personal lives, it's also reflected in our politics. So the fact that we are not even having a conversation about this issue may be the major reason why such a movement.
I actually have two questions. One thing is that, which I see commonly abortion in China, which is like more than, I don't recall the number exactly, but significantly more than 50% of the abortions are done on those women they already had abortion before they do abortion. So I want to know what's the situation in Nigeria, and also after those people, women they did abortion, do they get any information of the birth control information that protect you like after you graduate? And the second thing is, I think when you're talking about the like the USA, I think it came to Nigeria to do those things. Do they have any kind of international groups are going there to teach people about the birth control? I mean, this probably won't be fit in that cultural and is there anything happening out there now? And do you see like because the girls that talked about she couldn't tell her mother that about this situation. You think that when this generation grow up, like those women they had abortion, or their family had friends they had abortion, this situation will grow back. And I do think another thing is I think that when the China and US are competing with each other in Nigeria, which is very good for our country.
I mean, I can only speak really anecdotally about this because one of the side effects of this stuff being totally taboo is that there are no reliable statistics, right? And it's very hard to measure these things. And there have been different studies in different sections of this, but even experts can't grant how many abortions are happening a year. And we've seen studies that the Kubacher Institute estimates that between 3,000 and 4,000 a year, and the Nigerian government estimates like 30,000. So that just gives you an idea of like how difficult this stuff is to quantify and that one. But I will tell you that we met one particular woman in Badia neighborhood that is here, who I think she's 23. She had 7 abortions. 7. And and she said she still had no idea about it. This is a young woman living in like a neighborhood surrounded by other people, and and still at that age, after 7 abortions, I have no idea about contraception. So I would be willing to bet that you're probably right that you're getting a lot of more than one. And we did talk to quite a lot of women who had more than one. And just had no way of getting information. Just didn't even know.
Could I just add something to that? Just quickly. I'm educated. I'm relatively very educated to the majority. And even I, in terms of getting information about birth control, I have to Google. So there's just not enough information. Nobody's talking about it enough. So that is how and when you talk about foreign organizations coming to give education, it's not being done. A lot of monies are constantly talked about being thrown at programs like this. Sex education for girls, but it's very limited, and it's not going into the population to educate women enough. So you can imagine her who is she's not educated, she's living in a very not so privileged part of the. How will she get that information? So not enough, a little enough is being done to prevent such education. Seriously. In schools, we're not talking about it. In churches, of course, we're not talking about it. In mosques, we're not talking about it. And then a lot of women grow up with the tradition. My mother, they grow up with this tradition of we don't talk about it, but if you talk about it, you encourage them to have sex or to become promiscuous. I told you a story this morning. A couple of years back, I think in the 90s or so, WHO and some donors came together to push for safe sex in Nigeria, and their idea was to bring in millions of condoms into Nigeria, to share it for free and what. And then churches, mosques, women groups came together and said the West are finally trying to make them promiscuous, blah blah blah. That whole program is it's a very complicated science.
Hey everybody, unfortunately we have to wrap up. I know even one of these issues goes occupied for hours. So please feel free to adjourn to the main room and we can keep talking. I also wanted to let you know about this event is part of a series that we're doing here on women and children. And so you all have flyers, so I don't really need to read the dates, but trust me, you want to come to these things. They're going to be wonderful, more amazing journalists, more awesome discussions. If you forget, or if you forget your flyer or something, you can also sign up for a newsletter right outside, and that'll keep you abreast of all the events that we have coming up. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time.